Welcome back, everyone, to the Fast.Forward.Pride podcast. I hope all of you have watched our pilot and decided that it was worth coming back for. My name is Alessandro, my pronouns are he, him, and I'm here with Jason.
Yes, and episode 1, really excited to get into it. And unfortunately, our plan has kind of gone a bit awry because happened last week.
Listening to our community, and some of you have asked us to address something that has happened in Soho in London last week. So our first episode was supposed to kind of give you a bit of the origin story of the podcast and why we think this is important, and it was specifically around intergenerational dialogue and conversations, amongst many other things. But some of you will know that there's been a demonstration in Soho, in the kind of gay village of London, a demonstration from a religious group that was clearly trying to make the point that being LGBT is... intimidate us as a community, and reminding us that they think existing as LGBT and queer people, it's a sin. But what was particularly scary, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, so gather your thoughts, Jason, but there were two things that were particularly scary. As someone who's from Italy, it really reminded me very closely, of images that I've seen of fascist and Nazi marches back then. Yes. They had black uniforms, and they were all regimented and like in a line, and they were all chanting. Yeah. So that was quite scary in itself, right? Yeah. And then obviously the second aspect, it was happening in the middle of London, very progressive city, in the middle of the gay village of London. And actually, we're not up in arms about it. Yeah. But before we get to that, the core issue really that I'd love to kind of hear a bit of some of your insights and thoughts on is this sort of the connection between Nazi and fascist movement and religion, because you were telling me something really interesting that I didn't know about before. So if you could share with our listeners.
Well, two things. I mean, I was brought up as a Catholic. I was born and raised as a Catholic. My black family in Trinidad were very staunch Catholics. My grandmother played the organ in the Catholic cathedral in Trinidad. I was a soloist. I was kind of the Aled Jones of the Catholic community, and a soloist in many of the Catholic churches in downtown Port of Spain and Trinidad as a young boy in the 70s. And the thing that I had to learn in as a recovering Catholic is the impact that the Catholic Church and the connections that the Catholic Church had with fascism. So back in World War II, the Catholic Church, of course, in Rome, which is in Italy, made a deal with Mussolini to protect themselves from fascism. They also funded themselves with fascist money, and they also made a deal with Hitler and the Nazi Party to protect themselves from Hitler. This is unknown information, but it's all very clearly there online. So I please invite you to go there and search. I'm not making this shit up. Sorry, I shouldn't be cursing. But the Catholic Church has shaken hands with fascism for over the last 60 years, from World War II go back to today. And then when you saw this group of fascist Christian nationalists marching through Old Compton Street in the gay village of London, wearing black uniforms and calling themselves an army, this is textbook fascism hidden behind faith. Happening on our streets today. We should all be up in arms about this. And we should be calling out the government. We should be calling out the Labour government. We should be calling out the police. This was an unlawful march through the streets of our main city wearing fascist uniforms. I don't care if you were covering it up with your religious belief. Fascist religion is still fascism. And we have to be, I'm livid watching this happen in what I consider a safe space. And our community, I'm sorry, but we have to take responsibility for becoming very apathetic about our safety. When you see the trans civil war, when you see the racism, no fats, no blacks, no Orientals on Grindr profiles of white gay men, this has been going on for decades within our community. And the only way we are going to escape it is by coming together and finding unity. And, this podcast is about that. I think when you and I first interacted, and I can repeat, for Joyce Leshen, who I became very close friends with during lockdown, You know, Joyce, as a queer man of color, said to me, Jason, you're the first queer man of color over the age of 50 that I'd had any serious interaction with. And that again goes back to the fact that we lost a generation of queer men during AIDS. We have misogyny and patriarchy built into our systems of our community. These are all the hard discussions that are not happening.
And they will happen. We've just given you a few teasers of episodes to come. We definitely want to talk about the fact that many young queer men and you know, queer people haven't really interacted with people from different generations. And also we want to talk about all of that misogyny, internalized, toxic masculinity.
Yes.
So subscribe and make sure you come back for the next one, because those are some of the topics we will cover. But I want to go back to the religious topic, and thank you for sharing that really scary and quite upsetting history of how the Catholic Church in particular decided to protect themselves by making deals with Nazis and fascists, and we see now many religious groups. You mentioned they even call themselves army. They're using techniques that very much remind us of that time.
Yes.
And this should be a lot more well known and something that we should be appalled by.
Well, the Pope that when you were born, the Catholic Pope at the time was linked to Hitler's youth. He a Polish man, in his youth, he joined Hitler's youth party.
Yeah.
So we're talking about an intrinsically fascist organization masquerading behind faith. And this is something that, we have to look at what religion does. Religion has criminalized homosexual people in its teachings in a very recent time of our history. In 1946, there's a documentary called 1946. Please Google it, please find it, please watch it. And it speaks about the time in the rewriting of Catholic texts where they took away the word masturbation and inserted homosexuality. Before 1946, homosexuality was not mentioned in the Catholic Bible, including the King James Bible, and we now think that King James was a queer man himself. They rewrote that text to create a discriminatory idea of homosexuality. And this has been happening throughout the history of the Catholic Church, the rewriting of this text to suit their purposes. The original text did allow slavery. Again, it's been erased. The original text made masturbation the big sin. It then removed that and made it homosexuality. They chop and change to suit their political agenda. And when you see the Irish Prime Minister now taking away gay rights and using this text as her Bible to tell a political story, this is the connection that we have to be so afraid of. We have to be afraid of Trump signing Bibles upside down. He can't even tell the right way up of a Bible. That man is using fascism and using evangelical fascism to fund and protect his political agenda, which is fascist. But this is what everybody needs to be afraid of. They're not just coming for us as queer people. They're coming for every marginalized community. Women are not safe. Children are not safe with these people. When you look at the amount of pastors and priests and the amount of money that has been spent to cover up the pedophilia of the Roman Catholic Church, it's over $4.2 billion has been paid out at the moment. $4.2 billion in payouts to the victims of pedophilia by Catholic priests. Just recently, last week, we saw one of the big evangelical pastors being convicted of the rape and sexual assault of a minor. These are all interconnected things. These institutions are speaking the words of their God. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, totally different story.
Now, I'm going to challenge you because obviously some of our listeners will be religious in some way, different religion, and we focused a lot on, Catholic structure now. But do you think religion has a role to play?
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at the history of queer people, all indigenous cultures imbued queer people with the power of spirituality. So the two-spirit, the medicine men, the shaman were all queer people. And the concept of the Shah person And the Obeah woman, they just released today in Jamaica that they want to decriminalize Obeah. Obeah is an African spirituality that was criminalized by our European colonizers. And of course, when you talk about black magic, all of this was done by white people to rip away our indigenous spiritual culture. So we had it in Africa. We had it in North America. Two-spirit people were imbued with spiritual leadership because they understood both of the gender binaries. They were a part of it. They could see how a woman was impacted on spirituality, how a man was impacted by spirituality, how non-binary people were impacted on spirituality. And that's why European colonizers criminalized those religions, because they wanted to impact us with their own chosen God, who was blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus. I mean, how did you come up with a concept like that from somebody who was born in the Middle East? And, it again shows the whitewashing and the propaganda that has been used by these structural white colonial powers. So we have to take back our spirituality. I really want to speak to queer people out there. Being spiritual is different to being religious. You don't have to go to church. You don't have to follow these texts. Do what feels natural to you. Spirituality is from within. You don't have to walk into a building with big high ceilings and somebody telling you drink the blood of somebody from a gold goblet. Bullshit, right? Why is black Obeah and black African culture, spiritual culture, being criminalized? There's a reason, right? There's a reason. It's because they don't want us to empower ourselves. And we as queer people have been used. So we see a lot of queer people, because of the fear of rejection by family, etc., becoming a priest. I nearly became a priest in Trinidad because that was the natural progression for a queer person in high brown families in the Caribbean. If you were queer, you became a priest and you became a nun, and that's it. That's what your purpose in life was. And I went down that road, I was so ingrained into that Roman Catholic belief that I looked into becoming a priest. But as soon as I started to get sexually assaulted by Catholic, it was mainly white Irish Catholic priests at the time, going back to the 1970s, there weren't a lot of black priests at the time. Again, the racism within the Catholic Church, you didn't see black priests until the 80s and 90s. There were no black priests. There were black nuns, but black men leading, no. It was trust the white man on everything.
I love what you said about the difference between religion and spirituality, and most important, I think, also kind of questioning those institutions and not letting them guide your beliefs. Because I think many people, me included, I was brought up Catholic, and I think I absorbed and treasure many of the values of kind of love and forgiveness, but because I decoupled them from the institution, an institution that actually was saying, I can't love you as a queer person. So I think being able to challenge, and not just religion, generally, like institutions not taking what they say as the only absolute truth, but finding the things that you can resonate with, but also questioning the things that you think, this is not right. And I think that's how we can potentially push back and reclaim that kind of space that the religion that is now being politicized is imposing on us, this kind of narrative.
And I think we as a queer community also have to reclaim our own choices about queerness. The concept of transness, for example, has been co-opted by white trans people here in the global north, whereas in the global south, we have a whole history, thousands of years history of third gender people. So we have to look at what part of you is embracing a whitened version of queerness and ignoring the fact that we have existed for thousands of years in indigenous communities. Where is their space on that global discussion? Right now it's being dominated by white LGBTQ plus people. And a lot of the marginalization that we are seeing is buying into a colonizer's idea of what queerness should look like. So we need to look at decolonizing ourselves as queer people as well.
Well, thank you incredibly. We've come to the end already of a really heated episode, a really important topic. Please,
call to action.
Yes, call to action.
Go out. Please do your own research. The point of this podcast is to trigger conversation and to trigger your inquisitiveness. So please go out. You look out for all of these things. Do the work, because there is a lot of information there on the internet for us to find.
Well, thank you very much. And if you've got anything that you want to say, please get in touch with us.
What's our email?